I'm Michelle,
And I'm Ronald,
and this is Talking Squirrels.
a middle school ministry podcast. Michelle,
I nailed it.
I'm so proud of you. I really am. No, we only have problems every now and then.
Every other time is fine.
Yeah, and that's the thing is I'm gonna leave this in here. I'm not gonna take it out because this is real life. This is life. I like it.
Oh, I love it.
You are about to go on a summer camp.
Yeah, we are. We are leaving Friday.
Awesome. Where are you going?
So we go to a place called Rock and Water, which is in Coloma, California.
Wait, rock and water or rock
Yes.
and water?
It's Rock and Water. Rock dash N dash water.
In, not and.
N as in number.
Right.
Yep.
So is it a location, or is it like a camp that does everything for you and you guys just like what kind of camp is it?
So it's both. They take care of like all of the basically activities. So we do whitewater rafting, we go canyoneering, we do team building day. They take care of all of our food, everything like that, and we take care of like our campfire and chapel.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's really nice that like they take care of basically everything during the day.
Yeah.
And all we have to do is like speak, worship, game for campfire time.
No, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Does it happen around literal campfire?
Yes.
See, we do like mission trip camp. So like it's a little bit more programmed. Like there's a stage and a band and all that stuff.
Right.
I'm interested in like the campfire experience because
it's wonderful.
I never did that part like as a student. Is that what you grew up doing?
That is what I grew up doing. I actually did 8 years at 4-H camp. I don't know if you guys have 4-H out there. I imagine you do.
4-H camp? Like you go out and collect berries?
Sometimes, yes.
Oh, 4-H camp.
4-H camp, yeah.
Oh, I thought you said forage camp.
I mean, when we go on hikes, we forage. It's great.
Okay.
But I did 8 years of that as like a camper and then as like a staffer and a leader. And we had a campfire every single night for 5 days straight. And so I was so used to having campfires. And then for our youth camps, we always ended up either going camping or doing something outdoors. And so we always had like campfire. We always had s'mores, doing all that kind of stuff. And so Rock and Water, we do that as well, where there's an actual campfire. We don't do s'mores because they're like a super healthy area. So we're not allowed to bring in any sugar, sweets, kind of stuff like that, which is actually kind of nice. But then they sleep in tents or they sleep under the stars.
You can't bring in any sugar?
I know.
I mean, sleeping under the stars is great and everything, but like no candy?
Nope.
Wow.
Mostly, I mean, like there has been like sightings of like bears and things like that. So it just makes sense.
Okay. So there is also the like, hey, we don't want bears in our camp.
Totally. Yeah. It's out in the wild. Like it's literally in a mountain.
So
I've never seen a bear there, but
I feel like all of my camp experience has just been like pseudo camp at this point, and not like actual camp. Because you're talking like actual camp, like
we're around the campfire. Speaker is talking around the campfire. Worship around camp. Yep.
Yeah, that sounds way cooler than like
it's great.
See, our stuff is always like way more programmed, and there are videos and all this kind of stuff and laser light shows typically.
Yeah, and we usually have our fall camp. It's way more programmed. It's up at an actual camp where they bring in the band. It's inside. It's cabins. All that kind of stuff. And then we go to Hume with our high schoolers. Hume, what up? And then our summer camp is always like camping, going somewhere outdoors
with the fire.
With a fire.
So what about leaders? Like how many leaders do you normally take? Like ratio, like one for every 10 kids, one for every like 3 or 4.
I wish that would be the dream.
Right.
My goal every year is 1 leader per 7 students.
Okay.
And we actually hit that this year, which is great.
Rockin'. Do they like have responsibilities while they're at like the camp? Like do you guys get stuff to do?
Yeah, so they are small group leaders. So they have their specific 7 for that week, for the 4 days that we were there.
Yeah.
And then usually they're in like the same raft as their kind of group as well. So when we go whitewater rafting, they're having that experience with their group.
Oh, that's cool.
Um, yeah, they're sitting. I mean, they're hanging out with them. They're playing games with them.
Yeah.
So
No, that's awesome.
yeah.
Okay, so I know, like you're going to go to camp.
Mhm.
Like when you get back, other than like, okay, I know there's always the hey, we've got to return the vans, we got to make sure everybody's lost and found gets returned to everybody.
Right.
Like
I have 5 sleeping bags by who is missing theirs.
for real, somebody like I'll hold up a sweatshirt and be like, "Whose is this?" No one says anything. It's got a name.
Right.
No one says anything. I know exactly whose this is. Just say it. Like nothing. Lost and found.
Or you're, like, looking at them, and they're like, "Is this yours?" And they're, like, ignoring you. I'm like, "Okay."
I don't think that's mine. Do you debrief with your leaders like when all's said and done?
So this is something that I need to work so much better on because oftentimes our debrief is kind of like the bus ride home from camp.
That's not bad.
It's not terrible, no.
Super fresh in your mind on the bus ride home from camp.
So fresh. Yeah.
Mm.
And oftentimes, like, when we send students to bed, the leaders will often, like, talk together about that day.
Oh, like a
Um,
nightly
like a
debrief.
night debrief, yeah. And we're like, "Cool, like, what worked well this day? What do we need to know?"
Yeah,
Um, things like really small things just for that time period where it's, like, 10, 15 minutes, so we can prep for the next day, right? But, yeah, on our way home this will be the first year that we have, like, a charter bus.
ooh, fancy.
Yeah, I'm so excited. And so I'm gonna probably take some time there and, like, have all the leaders, go in the back of the bus while all the students are sleeping on the way home.
Go the bus.
Um, I know it's great. And just kind of, like, talk to them like, "Hey, like, what was kind of a highlight? What is something that we should look at for next year?" Um, but then, like, ideally, I would wanna do that, like, a week later.
Yeah. No, and so what are you said you asked some questions. What are some of the questions that you ask?
Yeah, I think I mentioned too of just like, "Hey, what was one of your highlights?
Yeah.
What's something you wanna see next year? Um, how can how can we better prepare for next year?"
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, that was we learned a lot of things from the past couple of years, which was
Oh,
great.
that's a trial by fire question.
Oh, totally.
Mm.
We're like, "Oh, we should have definitely packed a lot more sunscreen."
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So we
Mm,
bought so much extras this year. Um,
good.
but then I usually just let them talk.
Yeah. How much like when you're debriefing your leaders and when you get their input, like how much of it is stuff that you're like, oh, 100% that's something that needs to change, and how much of it do you feel like is, that's yes, that is a thing that happened, but like I don't know if we can do anything about it.
Yeah. That's a great question. I think a lot of it is usually, like, pretty solid stuff that I'm like, "Oh, that's a great idea."
Yeah.
Um, like, one of them last year from camp was like, "Hey, we should do, like" we love playing slapjack.
Ooh,
Do you guys know the card game?
I do know slapjack.
Oh, yeah. So she literally was like, "We should do a slapjack tournament." And that has now started this, like, 2-year thing of, we crown a king, and whoever wins gets free in and out on the way home.
Oh, heck yeah.
So that was, like, such a great idea. Um, but then there's other ones where it's like, "Oh, I wish we could do, X, Y, and Z." I'm like, "Well, here's the thing.
Mm,
Like, budget-wise, that would cost another, like, $200 per
that's
person," like, that kinda stuff, and you're like, "That's just not doable."
again.
What was that?
Like it's like we can't go whitewater rafting like a second time. You know.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like, "Yeah, we could add on a 4th thing," but then it's, you know, half the people won't come because it's so expensive.
Yeah. Ooh.
But what do you got? What about you?
Well, I love. So we started doing this with our last retreat, in with that we do a Google form to kind of start the conversation. So,
Oh, I like that.
so we do what you're saying. We kind of huddle up a little bit throughout, and we're like, "Hey, leaders, how's it going?" Kind of get like a pulse check,
Hmm. Mhm.
because you can make some changes like during the camp. Like if you find out that
Absolutely.
something is going so terribly wrong that you need to make a big change, like you sometimes you can make that change if you get the feedback and you've got the plan. You can do that. But a lot of the times, like you're saying, you're thinking, what can we do different next time? And so we did a Google form this year, which is super helpful. So we could
Yeah,
say
I
things,
like that.
hey, give us, and it's not, I've got half of my responses back, so I've got to go chase down some more leaders and be like, hey, I really need the rest of this. Um,
Nice.
but
Sounds about right. About half fill it out.
it does. So I didn't do any like multiple choice, like on a scale of 1 to 5. It
Nice.
was all like you have to actually type this answer because I wanted them to think about it and give me real feedback. So it kind of
Totally.
split into, like you're saying, rock and water can give you food, but you can't necessarily make them cook better food,
Right.
right? So
Our
you
food
can,
is great though. They're so good.
I'll say, okay, well then you don't have to worry about that. So
Exactly.
we divided up into, hey, what are some things that like the camp did that like just tell us what you think about it. Like the housing or the
Hmm.
food or the location, all that stuff. Like we can't necessarily change those things. We can't change that it's hot in Louisiana in the summer, right?
Right. Yeah.
But
There's
then
factors that are just gonna happen.
we have other categories of like, hey, this is stuff that we can actually change. Like
Mm.
when we leave, did we leave too early? We ask everybody to drive 15 passenger vans because we don't have the crazy laws that you guys have in California. We have
Right. Where I'm
CDLs.
told I can't drive vans anymore.
Yeah, ever at all. Um, so like, we asked them how that went and if their thoughts on how we could do that better. And so we split it up into that. And then what I'm doing is once I get everybody's responses back, kind of compiling them and then go,
Hmm.
hey, so and so, let's meet for lunch. I want to talk about this thing that you wrote.
Oh yeah, so you can go a little bit more in depth.
Yeah, and maybe they don't need to. Maybe everything's okay. But I always feel like I tell them if you write something that you're like, hey, Ronald, we need to talk about this more, then we can talk about it more. What I want to do is what you're saying is get everybody back in the same room, you
Yeah.
know,
Hmm.
like huddle up again and be like, hey, mission trip was awesome, camp was awesome. Uh, help us with next year.
Yeah. And that can be really hard because everyone's so busy, especially if they take time off for the
Oh,
mission trip before the
yeah,
trip, and then it's like,
motivation to
hey,
do
I
the
got to get back to life.
yeah, totally. And so like if they, yeah, I'm trying to think of, simple church kind of, hey, could we do it like during a service? Could we do it right before, right after a service where you're already here, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I always try and aim for like a Sunday lunch, and like we take care of the lunch,
Totally.
um, stuff like that.
I know Derry Prinkert of My Third Decade
Hmm.
asks 4 questions of what was right, what was wrong, what was missing, and what was confused.
Ooh,
So those are some like general debrief questions that I think are useful for just about anything you do, but could really help out with like a summer camp kind of deal.
yeah, I like that.
Like
I like
what's
that
missing?
it's simple for things too.
Yeah, s'mores are missing. So this is
Sm-
obviously a problem.
right? I'm like, I need my 10 p.m. snack of s'mores.
So, and then what's great about it is if you have time to like debrief with your leaders and somebody comes up later, like leadership comes up to you and says, "Hey, I heard about this problem at camp." You can say, "You know what? I talked with my leaders, and either, hey, that came up and we're addressing it, or it's funny that you bring that up as somebody said it was a problem because I talked to all of my leaders and nobody said that.
Mm.
So maybe we could dive into that." A question I added on my Google form. I'm super proud of myself of this one, and maybe that's a bad thing, but I
Mm.
asked, "What have you heard from other parents that you think we need to hear?"
Ooh,
So, like, I often I don't get the parents' full disclosure on how something went. Can you
that's
imagine?
super true.
Right. And
They
so
just talk
like
about it behind their backs.
right, but they'll talk about it with other parents.
Yes.
And so I tell them like you guys are my eyes and ears. Like I don't get all the complaints. I certainly don't get all the compliments. I know that. But I know I don't get all the complaints. So if you hear a complaint out there that's valid, like let me know about it because it might be a super huge thing, but if I don't hear about it, I don't know about it. I can't do anything.
That's really good.
So
Hey, I think I might steal that one.
you steal away. This is youth
Thank you.
ministry. What we
This
do.
is true. We borrow.
Borrow, and then
Imitate.
after a while we call it it's ours.
Yep.
Um, so definitely, yeah, debriefing with leaders is super important because they can sometimes see stuff. Like we're so into the weeds of the camp or the mission trip that sometimes we miss what's going on. And when we just invite that extra dialogue, oh man, you can get so much good stuff just from debriefing your leaders and figuring out like, hey, this is something I missed. I need to know this.
Yeah. And I think it's really important too, like leaders want to be heard, right? Like
Word.
just like our students want to be heard, like our leaders want that too. And so even just taking that time to say like, hey, tell me about your experience of it, is
Yeah.
huge.
Well, and then they have ownership because maybe if they
Yeah.
come back next year and you're like, hey, that thing you suggested, we made that change. They're like, heck yeah,
Yeah.
I have a voice here and this
Mhm.
matters.
Or if it's something that like they want to do, I'm like, cool. Do you want to lead that for next year? Like, do you want to
Put them
like
in
take that
charge.
on? Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I love that stuff. That's where it's
Hmm.
at. Well, Michelle, I'm definitely going to be praying for you and for your camp experience, that there are
Well,
no bear attacks
thank you.
and that you and your students grow closer to Jesus. That sounds like a really neat camp.
Thanks. Yeah, we're excited. It's supposed to be pretty hot, so that's the only thing that we're like a little nervous about. But
Okay.
you know,
Pretty hot California or pretty hot South Texas?
well, that I don't know. I've never been to South Texas,
You need to fix
so
it,
I've
Michelle.
never felt that heat.
Mm.
It's gonna be like 90s, 100.
Okay, that's coming close. So
So
we haven't had our like 113 days yet,
oof.
but it's coming. It's August for us. We always get that.
Oh gosh, I will be praying for you guys for the entire month of August.
Bless you. Okay.
Well,
Hey,
I'm sitting in 75-degree weather.
bro. Yeah. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for listening. If you are taking a trip this year, man, really think about how you can capture the voices of your leaders and debrief with them. It's going to be super valuable to you, gives them a voice, and is definitely information that you need to know and can help you do better the next time. So thanks for listening, everybody. We will see you guys next week.
Bye.